Good afternoon. I got my visor on for. How's everyone doing today? Yes, we should all be hunky-dory, tickety-boo. As a pen, stray pen. Good, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Usual thing. Let's make sure that you can all hear. No, that's not Louise. Where's Louise? There she is. Just like to hear if you can hear me, and also if you can hear Louise.
Can you hear me?
So just want to make sure that everything is okay. That's super, super, super. We'll just wait until you get to hear us because there's about a 20-second delay. As long as you can hear both loud and clear. Thank you, Amco. Thank you so much indeed. Good afternoon. What a gorgeous day it is today in sunny Ystrad. Don't you agree, Louise?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I'm looking at the chat.
Yes. This is very, very good. Oh, I'm not quite sure what's happened to my logo on the top right-hand corner. That doesn't look good, does it?
What's happened?
My logo on the top right-hand corner of the Super Source screen. I have to get rid of that. There's always things to do. Good afternoon. Okay, so let's start. Anything happening this week, Louise, that we need to talk about? Or anything like that?
I don't think so.
My positioning is off, isn't it?
Can you think of anything?
Yeah, the positioning is right off on that image.
Any news? We recorded a new podcast, which I'm so excited about.
Absolutely. We had, don't forget, here we go. All right. Our podcast, if you haven't watched it, you can't. You've got to listen to it. So it's go on to whatever podcast player. As I said, we're on Deezer, Comcast, podcast player. I just made that one up. Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, Anchor, them all. Okay, and all you got to do is search for Jewellery Talks at the Bench. We've done 3 so far. We recorded one on Friday last week. We had a guest in. It was a counsellor, and we talked.
Like a therapist, not like a county counsellor.
Not a county counsellor.
You know, a therapist counsellor.
Therapist counsellor.
Yes.
To talk. I'm not going to tell you what it's all about. We're going to get this sorted out hopefully within the next week.
Yes, it was an absolutely brilliant chat, wasn't it? So I can't wait to hear it all edited down into the podcast. Very insightful.
Yes.
You had a little moment, didn't you?
I did have a moment, I must admit.
Yes.
I felt I was listening more to what Mary was saying and Louise was saying. I should have been entering into the spirit of asking questions and so forth, but I was so taken back with everything that was being said, and yeah, I had a moment. So
much of it was relatable and so much of it resonated so loudly with me.
Yes.
That.
Should we say what it was about?
Yes, I think we can, can't we?
Yeah. There's no reason why not.
Yeah.
What was it all about, Louise?
Well, it was about imposter syndrome, and it's something which we talk about
quite often.
Quite often, yeah. It does affect a lot of us. In fact, I found out from Mary it affects, or has affected at some point, around 70% of us. And these are the people who talk about it and understand it. But you know what? Actually sitting down, talking to Mary about it, who's qualified in her field, isn't she? She's not only a qualified and experienced therapist, counsellor, she's also a trusted friend. So just understanding more about it and unpicking it and unpacking it has just made me understand it and understand the mechanisms of it, and really kind of puts it in its place. So yeah, it was absolutely brilliant.
Yes, it was the longest one. I think we talked for basically about an hour, and we're going to edit it down to about 45 minutes, perhaps 50 minutes long. It's longer than what we usually do, but it was really
so
good.
good, yeah.
And I don't really enter into the spirit of asking the questions. I felt I had a bit of a therapy session, to be honest.
It did end up a little bit like
that.
Yeah.
And so much so that Mary emailed Louise a couple of days after, in fact the next day, wasn't it?
The next morning, yeah.
And asked if I was all right.
Yeah, was Andrew okay? And
Simon, yeah, because it really did hit me, yeah, what I didn't think.
It caught you off guard, didn't it? But it was a good thing.
Oh yes,
it's a really good thing.
Yes. So yeah, we're going to try and sort that out now within the week, and we will certainly put that live. And when it goes live, we'll put it out on all the usual podcast players. And don't forget, search for podcasts, Jewellery Talks at the Bench. It is not necessarily going to be all about jewellery, is it? It's going to be relatable to anybody, everybody within their life. It's
interesting, I think, to jewellers and jeweller people in the industry, because it is relatable. But it's relatable across many industries, isn't it? But I can't wait for you all to listen to it, because I want to talk about it, and because it was great.
Yes.
So perhaps we'll get Mary on as a little guest. Perhaps she can be our little resident
therapist.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. And as we always say on At the Bench, we're going to say it with the podcasts. If you want us to talk about any subject, obviously within a podcast, it's got to be verbal, can't be visual. That's the exciting thing about it, because we do these Q&As, we do the films for At the Bench, and we need something to talk about. We have plenty of ideas, but obviously if there's anything that you want us to talk about, anything to do with relating to business, whatever you want, obviously drop Louise a line, louise@andrewberry.co.uk, and just let us know.
And it's great because, like say, Mary is qualified, experienced as a counsellor and therapist, so it's not just us with our pop psychology or having a chat about it. It was actual professional advice, which was really great.
It was. Super. Let's start, shall we?
Yes, please.
Right. Anything else we need to talk about? No. Yes, we do. Yes, Louise.
Is there?
I thought you went.
No. I was just getting ready.
Getting ready for the question.
Yeah.
All right. It is 4 p.m. 13th. Don't forget Valentine's Day tomorrow. 13th of February. 13th of February. Time for our Q&A. Louise, let us have our first.
I'm still looking for a question. Keep chatting.
Okay, so very quickly, we had an At the Bench member contact us regarding a locket. A locket, we've done catches, we've done hinges on our workshops. There's going to be another workshop next Monday, but look out for the social media happening on Wednesday regarding that. I'm not going to tell you anything about it. You have to wait until Wednesday to receive all your emails. But we produced a film for this particular At the Bench member when they asked about this type of swivel locket, not a hinge locket, but a swivel locket. And as a result of that, it was easier for us to produce a film. First film went up last week. The other 3 films are going up this week. So there'll be a whole 4 film series on this swivel locket where we've used a texture plate. And I'm showing you how to make a locket with a swivel. Okay. Is that long enough, Louise?
Yeah, well, I can't see any. I don't think we've had any questions yet.
Everyone's busy chatting away. Come on, guys, it's a Q&A. Come on. It's a question and answer. I'm going to answer the questions that you ask. So please ask us a question. I can see there's loads of chat going on. Whoa.
I haven't got any questions.
Come on, right.
Honestly.
At the Bench agony aunt. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Can we have some At the Bench imposter syndrome T-shirts for us to wear?
Because Mary worked here years ago, didn't she? And then she retrained as a therapist, counsellor.
She studied for 5 years.
She studied for years and years, and then because I kept saying to you, you do realise Mary's probably going to leave when she, as awful and upsetting as it was, she's probably going to leave.
Yes.
When she becomes qualified, and then the sad day came and she did. But so yeah, she knows about the jewellery industry as well, which is
she's got 10, 12 years.
Yeah, so she's got a very unique perspective because she understands the industry and she understands obviously everything else.
Yes.
So yeah.
And understands me.
Well, yeah, yeah, that's the hardest thing of all, isn't it? Okay, we've got some questions.
Good, let's have one then.
Ernestas is saying, hello, how does flush setting burnishing tool look like? What does a flush setting burnishing tool look like?
Okay, so we make these. We sell them as soon as we make about a dozen at a time, and literally they go in the store. It's store.at, no it's not, we've changed it, we've had to change it, it's atthebench.store. Does that mean, is that wrong? No, it is, well, atthebench.store. There we go, cool. They sell out within a day. So if you want a burnisher, there's a couple left on there, come along and buy one. What does it look like? It is usually 2.35 millimeter or 2.5 millimeter diameter rod, and here's the burnisher, and the rod comes out, and it just tapers down to a rounded, narrow point, and there's the mushroom handle that goes that way, just like that. It's there, and that is it. It is simply, you could even, in theory, you can make them yourself from an old burr, but the burrs are very, very hard. I don't like using burrs because they've been heat treated, although you can heat them up, let them cool naturally to release that the hardness, to get them back to the normal steel, but we don't use burnishes, we use a normal mild steel. They're pointed in that way. Now, you can get burnishes with a point that is something like that, or you can get burnishes like that, or you can get burnishes like that. So these are the tips. The finer the tip, there we go. So the finer the tip, the smaller the stone. If you've got a nice big stone, you can get away with a tip that is slightly more bulbous. And that is what a little mini burnisher looks like. It's as simple as that. How do you use it? Good question. You use it, don't listen to these people who tell you to use it vertically, because what happens is, I don't really understand how the stones stay in if people use them vertically. So here is your stone. You've made this. Okay, so there's your stone there. You made the sides of the hole. Okay, so this comes down this way. So the stone sits on a ledge, and you've got this bit of metal now. Okay, you've got this bit of metal. Oh, I'm getting better drawing my diamonds. There you go. This bit of metal here that you've got to push over onto the stone. Now, if you have a burnisher and you use the burnisher vertically and you rub that around, you're not really burnishing the metal onto the stone, because by the time you burnish the metal, you're effectively pushing the metal out that way. So if you have a stone that is slightly rattling within the hole, and not as in a baby sort of rattle, but if you could just see it moving slightly, using the square burnisher and going around vertically is not going to work. It is not going to get that metal over the stone far enough to make it secure. So personally, I would never use the burnisher vertically. It's not safe to do so. I know this. I've been doing this 38 years. So what you need to do is get your burnisher at an angle this way and apply pressure downwards. And as you apply pressure downwards, it is then burnishing this metal downwards and out. So you're getting that little bit of metal now coming over the edge of the stone. Because you can see, because obviously you get a bit of metal like this, you get your burnisher, you have it straight, it's not going to work. You're effectively pushing the metal away. You put the burnisher at an angle this way, what's going to happen is you push down, the metal is going to squidge out, because it does, and the metal then is going to be burnished out onto the metal, like that. So the burnisher has to come in at an angle. Once you've done that and the stone is nice and safe, then bring the burnisher vertically and then run it around, and that motion then, providing the end of your burnisher is nice and polished, will impart a nice shine on that rim. I know you didn't ask that question, but I thought I'd better add it. Yes, Louise, let's have another question.
Okay. KS, graver hell, having to push hard. When using a graver manually, how should it feel when cutting?
Depends on how deep you're cutting it. and depending upon the angle of the face. Usually, gravers should be honed, should be cut at a 45-degree angle, usually. So that would be your graver, okay, that you would perhaps buy. Make sure it's 45 degrees. Now, the trick is, if you have a graver and you keep the graver in this shape, and here's the handle by here, okay, and here's your graver that does that. Say it's a flat one, like that there. If you have this graver runs along the metal. It cuts into the metal. And where this graver cuts into the metal, if the graver face, the side and the underneath is shiny, it'll impart a shine upon the metal. Now, you can get a shine on the side here, not a problem, underneath no problem, but the trick is you have all this. And in theory, you've got to polish all this up. So the trick to do here is to do that, is to take off a lot of this. He says like that there, and that comes down like that there. So now, all you've got to do is polish this area by here. That will make sure that your graver now will move easily. The trick is, if that little angle then is 45 degrees, you've only got to lift the graver about 2 or 3 degrees upwards to be able to cut. Now again, there's a little trick. You should always put a heel on the bottom of this. So this is an enlarged view. This is the enlarged view. So you've got 45 and this is where it comes up. All right, so in theory, this area here is this area here. The trick is, down here must not be completely straight, because obviously if you lift the graver up this way and you push, the graver is wanting to push down and down and down and down. This is why you're having problem having to push hard. You bring that graver slightly downwards, the chance is now going to skid across the metal. So what you have to do is put what's called a heel on the bottom here, and literally it is about a degree, very, very slight, like that there. Okay, so here's the bottom of the graver like this. You cut a slight heel on the bottom. Again, that has to be shiny. So now you can lift the graver up that 1 degree. So this angle here is completely parallel with the metal. You dig it in, you start to cut, and you take it parallel. So now the graver is lifted about 1 degree. There's your heel, there's your cutting point there. So this now is completely parallel this way, and now when you're pushing with the graver, because you've got that heel, the graver is not wanting to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper as it would if you didn't have the heel. You've got that heel, it is now even all the way along, and that will make sure that you get a nice even cut. Without the heel, you lift it, it wants to go deeper, as in say a submarine with its little airfoils or something on the outer edges. You turn them at an angle, goes to the water, and it's going to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. That is what is happening with your graver. You go initially down and then turn them horizontal, which is what you've done with a heel. The submarine will carry on at an even level. I think that's your problem. You don't have a heel on the bottom of your engraver.
Okay, I sort of think my gravers have high heels.
Do they? Check. It's only got to be the slightest bit. If the heel is too deep at an angle, you've got to lift your graver quite a way up to push, and you may not get the same effect. Yes, Louise.
Okay.
Let us have another question.
Ready?
Yes, sorry. Yes.
Yep. Caitlin is saying, do you know a formula for how to make a Russian wedding ring to size?
No. Next question, Louise. No, I'm only joking.
Oh, I was going to say you too.
There is no real formula. This is the thing, because it depends on how thick the other bands are. Because you have your finger, this is your cross section through a finger. if that makes sense. Okay, you have a normal ring. The normal ring would fit the finger. Yep, and there's your ring going round. Not a problem. You want to introduce rings inside that for the Russian style, which means then the rings are going to dig into the finger. So that is not going to work. So all the rings have to be made bigger to allow for, it comes close to the finger and then it comes out above. Does that make sense? So here's your ring now. So you've got this gap underneath. This gap has to be the same, say, D-section height here. So in theory, what you could say, you've got, say, a size L. All right. You know your diameter. I'm trying to work this out in my head.
Do you want me to get a chart up? Oh, you got one there. Well done.
Yeah, so if you're a member of At The Bench, you have access to our workshop reference chart, which is this. And if you place an order on the store, we do sell these. It comes in all this information, blah, blah, blah. And on the back of this is this, a ring blank table. What you need to know is the height of your D-section wire, because that increases the diameter of your wire. So I'm just thinking, if you've got a size L, does this show it? Does this have it? So a size L, we have got diameter. Oh my gosh, it does. It's 16.10. So that is the diameter. If now you have this piece of metal and it's 1 millimeter thick, you have to make this 1 millimeter thicker in diameter. So according to my table, so that's 16.10. You have to go up to 17.10, which is an N1/2. So in theory, you've got to make all your 3 rings N1/2 for this to work.
But won't each additional ring take up another millimetre?
The rings don't lie on top of each other. They lie by the side of each other.
Ah, right, okay.
Yep.
You're probably better off working in millimetres than converting it into, because they don't always translate, in my experience, where I've got rings from suppliers.
No.
Sometimes
exactly.
they go on the wonk, don't they, for want of a better word. They're not always...
No.
I mean, I'm sure your chart is...
Well, my chart is
perfect.
Thank you for that.
But
yes.
I just mean other sizes.
So, yes, so world ring sizes and dimensions. If you get a chart, the chart should have the diameter. You know the thickness of your wire. So if that piece of wire was 1.5 millimeters, you have to add 1.5 onto the diameter of what it should be, which then would be 17.6, which actually has to be a size P, which then works out at 17.75. Hope that makes sense. So when you then reference your ring blank table, we wanted to make a size L. So if that was the case, using my little table here, let's come back onto the board, we would be looking at 54.6. That is the length of the metal you're going to need for size L. But if you've got your piece of wire and your piece of wire depth of the piece of wire is 1 millimeters, you've got to make it an N1/2, which actually comes out at roughly 57.5 approximately. So you can see there's quite a bit of a difference. There's 3 millimeters extra you have to add onto each piece to allow for then the other rings then to come in that gap. I'm going to try that out to see if it's right. But the best thing about a Russian wedding band is
if we got one we can just take apart and size, then I suppose it's hard to size on a mandrel, isn't it?
We'll make one up, yeah, very hard. So what we're going to do, we're going to do this on At The Bench. We are going to produce a film on At The Bench to do this, to see if I can actually work this out, calculate it.
Oh, fab. I'm going to write that
mathematically, okay?
Oh, so yeah, hold on, Caitlin, if you can, and we'll do the testing for you. Let me just...
The best...
I'm not writing it in there.
Well, this is a nice phone. This is my new one. Come on.
It'll go in there, it'll never come out again.
What, is that like my money? Russian wed sizing. Okay, that is what we're going to be doing. And I want to see if it's going to work. Because the advantage with the Russian wed is you've got the 3 bands, and because fingers take up the space within the insides here, because fingers never stay perfectly round, there is a chance that a Russian wedding band can be a little bit smaller than perhaps what it should be, or perhaps a little bit larger than what it actually should be, because your finger takes up that excess slack on the inside. Yeah, very good question. We're going to do that because I would like to work it out. Yes, Louise.
Good,
Let's just have
okay.
another.
What do you have for dinner tonight? I don't know, Claire, actually. I'm not sure. We're trying to be good, aren't
we?
we?
May be going out because it's very counterproductive, isn't it? Because the energy companies in this country...
Oh, is that why you suggested it? Oh, do you know what? Don't even get me started on this.
The energy companies, between 5:30 and 6:30 today, they are asking you to cut down on your energy...
I wondered why you'd suggest.
...on your energy consumption. You get money for it. So... we're eating out tonight, so basically what we're spending on eating out is far more than what we'd actually save if we did our bit with the energy.
The last time this happened, we went home, we had to sit in the dark and cold just so you could get your, I don't even know what, your £2.50 credit.
I think it was a £5. They gave us a £5. We just sat in the dark.
Don't put the oven on. I've got to reduce the energy consumption till oh well. Yeah, anyway.
We will see. Come on in, let's have another question.
Apparently I'm a bit loud. I think, Phil, that is just me in general, I think. £1.32, yeah, Victoria, it's just, honestly. This is, yeah. All right. You can all laugh, this is my life.
Okay then, Louise, let's stay in. Let's not eat out, and we'll sit there reducing our energy consumption by 24% to get our money. And I think the more you reduce, the more money you get.
I'll just stay and work.
What's the fun in that? Come on, let's go out.
Okay, let's have another question, shall we?
Yes.
So yeah, thanks for asking.
I'll just tune you down a bit. There we go.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ashley is saying, when soldering, am I just heating the ring or the solder?
No, don't never heat the solder. This is everyone's problems. Facebook is full of it. Everyone says, oh, I'm heating it up, my solder's melting, but it's not flowing. What am I doing wrong? It is because you've got to heat the piece up. If that solder, okay, use my blob, and I got my pallion on top like this, okay, here's my pallion of solder, this is solder, this is my blob. Okay, usually your blob, or the piece of jewellery that you're making, or whatever it is bigger than your solder. And what happens, you bring your torch in, here's your torch, here's your flame, okay, what's going to happen? This little blob has a small amount of mass. It is going to melt faster or get up to heat faster than your blob. So if you do this and aim your torch up here onto the solder, solder's going to melt, and you're going to say, my solder's melting, it's not flowing. What am I doing wrong? There could be a lot of reasons, like flux, not a clean joint, that sort of thing, but in this case you need to heat your piece of jewellery up first. Direct the flame, not like that, direct the flame this way, not quite that way, but that way. So this now is your flame. This is your flame, you heat the blob up, you heat your jewellery up, and what is going to happen, the heating is going to take place here, okay, and not up here. Okay, sure, residue heat is going to go towards the solder and it's going to warm up anyway, but the majority of the heat has to be on your piece of jewellery. If your solder is in contact with your piece of jewellery, the solder will gain temperature as your blob gains temperature. They will be at the same temperature all the time. And what happens is that your blob increases temperature, and when it gets to the right temperature for your solder to flow, because these are all in contact, the solder will flow. And it is as simple as that. Put your torch up here, the solder's going to melt, it's going to melt into a ball. you're going to ruin the solder, you're going to ruin its flowing properties, you're going to burn off all the alloys that are within the solder, and then you're going to have a problem. The solder's not going to flow. So always aim the heat at your jewellery, and then the heat will transfer itself to the solder, because they'll all get the same heat together, and your solder will flow. Thank you. Yes, Louise.
Okay.
Nope, that's me. Hang on. Yes, Louise.
Okay. Colin is saying, how do you get the square stones set in the eternity practice ring? How do you get the square stones set in the eternity practice ring?
Which ones do you have?
Is there a tutorial for it?
No.
That would be good, wouldn't it?
It would be good.
If you did a little film of just setting 1 or 2 to go along with these practice settings.
I've got one down there to do, the round one.
Yeah. Shall we do that?
I think. Put that in down there in your diary as well, please. The trick is, this is going to be really quick, okay?
Because you could send a little QR code then with the sets.
Oh,
see? Yeah, that was Colin's idea, not mine.
think of it all. You've got a square setting. Like that. Okay, here's your ring shank, coming like this, da-da-da-da, there we go. So there's my square. All right, your stone does not fit in it because the stone is slightly bigger. You now have to get that square stone into the square hole. The trick is you need to remove a little bit off the outer edge, and you can do that with a straight-sided burr. All right, but you're limited because when you come to the edge here, it's going to be rounded, isn't it? Because your burr is round, so you're not going to get tight into those corners. Use a smaller burr, you'll be able to get in nice and tight into those corners. But still, you may have a problem because on a square stone, the corners are delicate. Any pressure on the corner of your stone, the stones are likely to crack. So what you have to do, and I'm going to look down on top of my setting on a corner here. So this is the corner, and you may find that may be slightly rounded because you're using a burr that is slightly rounded. That's not a problem. Okay, so I shot there. What you want to do is relieve any pressure on where the stone sits in. So what you need to do is to get perhaps a very small ball burr, perhaps 1 millimeter, 1.5 millimeter, and put the ball burr in at an angle so you've put the ball burr into it. So the ball burr is here. Okay, so here's your ball burr that does that. You put the ball burr underneath or to the edge and you make a little pocket. So when your square stone sits in, the corner is in that pocket, it's in the void, so any pressure is gone. You do not have any pressure on that corner. That is underneath the lip, so you have the side. Here's the side of your setting. This is what it's like inside. There's the wall. You put the ball in here and you make a little area like that, So when the stone sits in here, the stone is set within that void. There is no pressure. Then you can burnish down on top of the stone, pushing the edge of the metal down, knowing that your corner is not going to be damaged because it is not under any stress, because it is held within a little area, little cave that corner goes into. Yes, Leah.
Okay. LA Creative, hello from Chicago.
Hello.
Could you give some tips on finishing soldering seams on gold-filled metal rings?
Oh.
Before we go ahead, can we clarify gold-filled is plated? Because gold-filled, we call it plated here, don't we? In the UK.
It's gold-filled or it could be rolled gold.
Yeah, but it's not filled, is it? It's the gold on the outside, because that can be a little bit, because it's called something else in the UK, isn't it? I'm assuming you might be in the UK, I don't know, but yeah.
Chicago.
I think it's duh.
Duh.
Yeah.
I've been at the Sears Tower. I want to take you to Chicago.
I'd love to go.
Yes, I went there when I was 17. Went in the Sears Tower, Hancock Building, went to the zoo where they did Love.
Chicago, you went to Chicago?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The CN Tower's not in Chicago, is it?
You can say the CN Tower. CN Tower's in Toronto.
I was going to say, yeah.
The Sears Tower.
Oh, the Sears Tower.
And the
I was
Hancock
thinking
Building.
then. Right, I did not know that.
Yes, because my mother had a pen friend after the war.
Yeah.
His name was Howard. He lived in Chicago.
Yeah.
And since the war, they wrote back and forth, perhaps once a year, twice a year. Used to send Christmas cards with letters. And because my auntie, her half-sister, ended up in Canada because she emigrated to Canada, we were going to go over to Canada to see my auntie and uncle. But those days, we booked our tickets. Sorry about this, guys. We booked a ticket. We booked our tickets, and we were entered into a draw. And if they drew your tickets out, you won your money back.
I never knew you'd been to America. How?
Yeah.
You never told me this.
On a plane, Louise. On a plane.
But I know that.
So I'm telling you. If I'm telling you guys, right? So we won our money back from the flight to Canada. Yeah. So with that money, my mother bought my auntie and me obviously a flight from Toronto Airport to Chicago to see her pen friend, who she'd never ever seen before.
No way.
Went to see him.
Good Lord.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, never saw him before, and perhaps a photograph and pictures, because this was before the days of internet, because this was just after the war, and they were writing back and forth, sending photographs.
That's
sort of
extraordinary.
thing. Yeah, so we went down to Chicago, and O'Hare Airport. Yeah, we went there, and we went and stayed with them for a week.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And Howard, who was my mother's pen friend, and Eileen was the mother, and there was a son, and there was a daughter, and Howard knew the chief of police in Chicago, and he got us all free entries into the Hancock Building, the tallest building, second tallest building in the world, and everything was, yeah.
That's extraordinary. Okay.
You heard it first, yes.
So yeah, Goldfield is completed and rolled.
Yeah. Going
so
back to the question. So but yeah, so I think I'm quite sure whether Howard died. Yeah, I don't remember the past 2 years.
Goldfield.
Yeah.
Yeah, seems.
Okay. Good. Anyway, going back to the question. Yeah, you're going to have to be very careful. I've never worked with Goldfield, but I think when you come to solder it, your soldering joints have to be. You've got a ring, okay? So the ring comes along. If you have a ring joint that is stepped like this, it's going to be no good, because when you've got a ring that's stepped here, and this is the ring shank, for instance, then you've got to file this away, you've got to file that away. And once you've done that, you've made the metal thinner, you've removed the gold on the outside, you're back to the base metal underneath. Not what you should be doing. You've got to make sure that every solder joint is perfect, so the solder joints come together perfectly, no gaps, no nothing, and they've got to be exactly level, because you have to keep the minimal amount of cleanup possible. So any filing on that surface, any buffing on that surface, you're going to be removing your gold layer. So you've got to minimize that as much as possible, so every joint has to be perfect. And I think that's how we would actually do it. Obviously, there are times when you have to have perhaps join in 2 wires together, I don't know, something like that, which isn't too bad, but you've got to keep your minimal amount of cleaning up to do, and by having your joints super perfect, super precise, not overlapping, they should be fine. That's as much as I can tell you, I'm afraid. Yes, Lou.
Okay, Vaughan Green is saying, is it better to push over a rub over setting or hammer it by hand?
I do like to work under magnification, and I do like to see the way the hammer action just burnishes over the metal. It doesn't burnish it, it just hammering forcefully pushes it over. I love to see that. But by doing that, there's goods and bads. If you hammer it, you're putting little dots, you're putting marks all the way along the edge of the bezel. And you've got to get those marks out. Every mark that you put into it, you've got to get out. If you get a burnisher and you burnish the metal back and forth, the metal will, every time you burnish over it, the metal will get further down, further down and you won't get those marks. But it depends on how big that bezel is, how thick that bezel is. If it's nice, thin, fine silver edge to a bezel, you can burnish it down, and the burnishing action will make sure that that metal stays nice and even, nice and shiny. But if you've got a thick bit of metal that you've got to get over, perhaps sometimes no matter how much burnishing will move that, and in that case then you either remove some of the metal from the outside to make it thinner to be able to burnish it over, or you get a hammer handpiece and go and burnish it over that way. If it was me, I would burnish it every time because it's easy and it's gorgeous, but you need a lot more pressure, you need a lot more strength in your arms to be able to push and to burnish it. Hammer action, you can just sit there all day and just burn it there, push it over. So it's entirely up to you, depending on the type of job that you are doing. Yes, Louise.
Okay, Penny, my other job is as a psychotherapist specialising in hypnotherapy. Oh my gosh,
oh, nice
you're not full of surprises today. We must talk. That's amazing. Lou is saying, discuss how to protect sterling when annealing to roll out sheet. Cover with the reducing flame flex.
I wouldn't worry about any reducing type of flame. It does help, but I feel that it doesn't get the work done quick enough. Protect the surface. Stop the oxygen from the flame from hitting the surface. You can use a flux. I use the good old borax cones here. I would paint that, bit of water, bit of slurry over the top of the piece that you're working on. Warm it up so the water evaporates and you're left with that lovely, clean, white film. Make sure that covers the whole piece. Then you can be sure when the flame comes down, the oxygen from the flame does not hit the surface. Or you can use other types of flux, magic boric, you can use some fire scoff, as long as you have put a barrier in place between your silver and the flame. The oxygen won't touch the surface, the oxygen then will not be absorbed into the silver, and then it won't necessarily oxidize and turn to copper, the cupric oxide, which causes a fire stain. So if it was me, I want to get in fast, get in quick, so I would try and use the biggest torch possible to anneal, and don't keep the flame too long on the surface. Just get to the right temperature that you need. You can use your markers, put your Sharpie on it to get to the right temperature, or turn all the lights out, or not all the lights out, but nice darkened corner so you can just see the colour of the metal. A nice gentle slight pink tinge to the metal, not even a pink tinge, but a slight coloration of the metal. You have gone far enough. But if you do want to protect the surface, a barrier, flux, borax, magic boric. My favourite is the fire scoff because you can warm up the surface and go tss, 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 or even Prips flux. You can go tss, 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 with the atomizer. It covers the surface. It produces the white coating, stops the flame from hitting the surface. Yes.
Good. Okay. Rosie is saying, I'm going to start making enamelled jewellery and I'm wondering if I can solder enamelled pieces together, or do they have to be soldered before enamelling?
You ideally have to do all your soldering before the enamelling. If you had an enamelled disc here and you have you want to join that onto another enamelled disc, if you wanted to join them together so they were loose, one hangs from the other, you can easily drill a hole before you come along and enamel it. So then you can join those with a little jump ring that would go through. But this is the reason why you have a solder called enameling solder. It melts at a higher temperature, higher than hard solder, because if you can imagine, you use some easy solder on a disc, you put it in the kiln with your enamel, the enamel melts at a higher temperature than what an easy solder would, and all your solder joints are going to fall apart, or your fittings are going to fall off. So you have to use an enameling grade solder, named because you have to use it if you want to enamel. So if you had a pair of cufflinks and you had your oval here and you had a bar upon the top that then would be split and you'd have the swivel going through it, you then would have to solder that bar onto the back of the cufflinks here before you enamel the other side of it, because you cannot solder once it has been enamelled, because the enamel will melt. There we go. Nice and straightforward.
Good.
Yes, Lou.
Rocky Mountain Bear, have you used agate burnishes? If so,
yeah.
how do you like them? Any advantages over regular ones?
Yeah, I have used them. I've only used them.
So what is an agate burnisher? Just exactly what it says?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not steel, it's an agate.
Just the tip is agate?
No, it's all agate.
Okay. Usually
set within, this isn't a burnisher, I know. If I get burnisher. So yeah, it's a length of agate, perhaps an inch, perhaps 2 inches, and it's set within a wooden handle. This is a bezel rocker, I know, but I'm just explaining. Handle, agate on the end. They are lovely. You should use an agate burnisher if you're doing some kembu, because the tip must not necessarily heat up. It takes the heat away from where you're doing it. So an agate burnisher is always needed when you come to do some kembu with your gold leaf on your silver. They sell agate burnishes if you're doing some precious metal clay, something like that. The problem is, you drop them, they break. They are good, but I find you cannot put as much pressure on them as if you had a normal burnisher. I'm just frantically trying to see if I've got a normal burnisher in here. I don't. Sorry. But
did you have any agate burnisher?
I have an agate burnisher. It's in the toolkit that is in that cupboard. But
I've not seen one.
Are
they common?
They are available. Steel burnishes are usually the best. Is there a box in there, or is it not in there?
What does the box look like?
Toolbox.
A toolbox? No.
No, it's upstairs.
Oh,
Sorry.
I want to see it.
Not now, Lou.
Okay.
So I would always personally use a steel burnisher. You find you can put a lot more pressure on it in case it snaps. If you drop an agate one, it'll break. But you do need an agate burnisher, as I said, if you're doing some kembu. Yes, Lou.
Okay.
I want to see it. I want to see it.
I want to see it right now. Well, I just thought other people might have wanted to see it as well. And that's why I was thinking, because I'd never heard of an agate. But that's just me, maybe.
Let's have a look.
I'll read out the next question, shall I? Because we're running out of time.
I'm listening.
Stuart's saying, any tricks for getting small items out of the pickle pot? Getting frustrated chasing items around the bottom of the pot with a pair of tweezers.
What have I got? Agate burnisher. How about that? Camera, close up. This, I'll come to your question now. Sorry, Louise.
Okay.
This is an agate burnisher. As you can see, there's a handle. There's an agate tip.
So it is just the tip then that's agate?
It's the end of it, isn't it?
Right,
it's the end. So yeah, whereas you have like a burnisher with metal on the end, you've got a bit of an agate on the end of that. But again, you drop it.
I would like to see, thank you.
Certainly. You can drop it and you'll smash it.
Whoa! I'm joking.
Steady. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, you cannot put a lot of pressure on it like you can with a steel burnisher. But the good thing about it is it always stays nice and shiny, nicely polished. If you're not having to burnish over a piece of metal and just burnish it to bring up the shine, as opposed to hand polishing it, brilliant. Okay, so the question was, how do you fish out things from your pickle? Now, go on to Amazon. Louise, perhaps you can go on to Amazon for me and look for plastic tea bags.
Plastic tea bags.
Plastic tea bags. Now, you may think Andrew's gone absolutely barking mad. Plastic tea bags at Amazon? Okay, I know they do have them on Amazon.
Did you have them on Amazon? Let's go on.
Amazon. So the idea is you have, now what I often use is a bag, one of those self-sealed bags where you just squeeze the top and it seals. What I often do is if I've got some little jump rings.
Oh, for loose tea?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. What I often do, there's some plastic ones. There we go, that's them there. You got them. $7.99. Super. Yeah, that's what I would use. If you want to grab the link, shove it in the chat for me. That'd be brilliant.
Any old one?
Any old one. Any old bag. Yes, please.
Reusable strainer?
Yeah.
Okay.
So often I use one of the little self-sealed bags and I will then get a bit of acid, put some acid into the bag, but the item I want cleaned into the bag, and just suspend it, close the bag, and just let it bob up and down in the acid, because the acid will safety pickle, because the warmth will actually clear the piece. You've actually got your pieces then contained in your little bag. Often I would use a plastic tea strainer as well. You don't want to put the items in the tea strainer when they're hot, because the mesh will melt, but you can put it in your pickle, put them in the mesh tea strainer, you've got them in there, you just bring it out into hand. Now also what Louise has put into the chat there is what we often use is some plastic silicone loose tea leaf bags. These are brilliant because again, you've got to put the pieces in the bags when they're not hot. If you do, you're going to ruin them. You put them in the bag, get the bag, you suspend it in your pickle. When it's just done and your pickle is nice and warm and your pieces are done, you pull out the tea bag, you dunk it in your water, and then you've got all your pieces in your little tea bag. How about that?
Good, like it.
Like that. Good one. Let's do another question.
That's a good hack.
Thank you. Good one.
Janet is saying, I've got 2 burnishes, one straight and one is curved. Why and what's the difference?
The curved burnisher enables you to get into places the straight one can't. Bored, Andrew, it's bored. Because, say for instance, you are trying to burnish, you've got a straight burnisher that does that, you've got a burnisher that does that. Now, if you have a bezel here, say you're doing a bangle, all right? They've got a bezel on top of a bangle. Yeah, you try now and get a straight burnisher on the edge here. You're limited because you can't get your burnisher down on the edge of the bezel to burnish over your turquoise cab that you've just set into it, because you can't push down hard enough against here. So this is where your curved burnisher would come in handy, because now you can burnish like that right up against it, because you've got the belly here that is enabling you to bring the burnisher out, so you can burnish downwards, and I would get my thumb on top of there to burnish that nice and hard against it, as opposed to a square burnisher that is really not going to be able to push that on there. This way the action comes from this direction here, which really pushes that bezel over. With this, you can't push that bezel over very well, hence the reason why a curved burnisher. And they have lots of other uses, but they are better for getting into areas and applying pressure at the right angle to get the metal over the bezel. Come on, Lou, nearly time to go. Let's have another question. Oh, it's on me again, sorry. There we go.
Okay, Penny said, can we have a class on this? I'm sorry, I wasn't sure now what that relates back to, so can you email me with your thing you want a class on, please? And John is saying, can you do a tutorial about enameling? Looks very cool on rings.
Okay.
I shall add it to the list. Enameling rings specifically, is it, John?
I've never done it. I'll put that way. I have done enameling. This is where I'm going. I don't really want to do that. I've never done enameling on rings itself. We just simply use them on slightly curved dome surfaces or flat. If you want inlay, enameled inlay, don't ask me, I'm not an expert on that, I'm afraid. But if you want me to do some films on enameling, we got the kiln, we got all the glass there, we can do it, not a problem. Yes, Lou.
Have this back so I can't stop playing with it. Thank you.
Thank you. It was in the box, but not where I said it was.
I got a question. I haven't got a question. I got a photo.
Oh,
do you want?
good.
Yes. I'm going to read the last question because I did skip this one,
okay.
Not intentionally, but just to talk about the yes. Tutorial requests. The die is saying tried setting a prong.
Oh, hang on a minute. Hang on. I'm not listening. My box is tipped everywhere now. There we go. That's better. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Tried setting a prong on a flat-looking rutile quartz yesterday, and the stone chipped, and I worked the metal too hard, and the prong broke off. I was trying to solder the back of this ring earlier. Okay. I don't think is that a question? I don't think.
The trick is with claws. As you know, the thinner the metal, the easier the claw will bend. So if you have a claw that is like that, and your claw is like this. Think about leverage. Think about a longer piece of metal is going to be easier to bend than a short piece of metal. So if you've got a chance of keeping your claws long, keep them long for as long as possible. If you had a thick claw like that and you have to get that claw over onto the stone, you're going to have a job because it is thick, okay? And if you have a burnisher and you're pushing it in this direction, you're basically going to push the whole setting to one side. Not going to work. But if your bit of metal was, say, come on, let's take that off now. If your bit of metal then was longer, like this, you could push this over this way because you now have more leverage pushing the metal over. So that's one way, and making sure that this is annealed would be fabulous. Or if you have nice short claw like this, a nice easy way of getting that over onto the stone, you're never going to push that short bit of metal over. So what I would be inclined to do is to shave off that. Now your metal is thinner and you've only got this much metal to push over onto the claw, sorry, onto the stone. That's exaggerated because it wouldn't be like that. It would be slightly that sort of shape. And now you've only got this much metal to push over onto the stone. Or when you have your stone, cut, come on Andrew, get yourself in gear. Cut your, oh come on Andrew, sort yourself out. Cut your claw into that shape. Very much like a bezel, you've got a little area here that the stone sits on. Now you've only got this much metal to burnish over onto the stone. Or use a 90-degree setting burr that looks like that and cut a groove into your claw. And what you would do, you would ease the claws apart, cut your groove, then push your claws closer together once the stone is in place. You don't have to try and force the stone in. You push the stone down and then you push the claws together, opposite claws, to pull it into place. And if you've done that, you can, all you got to do then is just round off the top like that, and you don't have to do any pushing onto that stone at all, because you'd have your stone, you'd have your claws here, 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 and here. You would ease those claws out, stone goes in, you then get your pair of pliers and you pull these together, you pull those together, and you pull those together. And by doing that, you pull them all to the stone. Then if it's not quite tight enough, I would then get a pair of pliers and pull those together slightly in that direction. Do the same over here, pull them slightly together, get those two, pull them slightly together, and do that. And you'll find that they'll be in contact with the stone. Very, very quick. Louise, let's quickly then have that quick show and tell, shall we?
Well, okay.
Yes?
Well, yeah.
Oh, you don't have to.
No, I want to. I just don't want to rush and, yeah.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Because this, let me just get my text up, is a ring. Oh, wait. You haven't done it yet, good. Oh, heck, where is it? Here, right, okay.
Just tell me when.
I'm ready. There, this is a silver rose ring made by Kevin. Which is absolutely stunning, obviously.
It's gorgeous, isn't it?
And then, but I haven't told you the best part of it.
Okay.
So Kevin says a lot of the rose rings you see on sale on the web are quite large. Some as big as an inch across, and many are cast. This one was cut with a piercing saw.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very good.
I would probably try and do things a bit differently next time, but one can always say that. Well, Kevin, it's an absolute triumph. It's lush. I love it.
It's very good, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love it. So
but you didn't know it had been pierced.
Cut it with a saw and then individual pieces and then pushed together?
I'm not sure.
Let us know.
Kevin, are you there? Can you? Isn't it gorgeous?
It really is gorgeous, ain't it?
Are you there, Kevin? Don't know.
No.
Kevin? No. Oh. No. Maybe Kevin can let us know for next time. Yeah. Isn't it beautiful?
Absolutely gorgeous.
I love roses.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Good.
Brilliant skills, Claire says. Yeah, everyone's loving it.
Lovely.
Beautiful.
We like that. So,
yes.
if you've got anything that you want us to to show or Q&A, please do get in contact. louise@andrewberry.co.uk.
That's my name.
Should we finish on that?
I think so, yeah.
Good.
Thank you, Beth. Everyone's loving the rose ring.
It is lush, isn't it?
It's beautiful, isn't it?
We'll find out from Kevin more information, I think.
Yes, let us know, Kevin. But did you pierce out each individual? It looks like perhaps the outer petals. I don't know, but the inner one, I don't know. It looks like it was.
Because sometimes you do that.
Yes,
and then you make a slightly smaller one. Obviously better than that. And then you do a slightly smaller one again, and you dome them. You put them in a doming block to bring them into that doming effect.
Yeah.
You do that and then you solder all 3 or 4 together then.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Cool. Excellent. Love that.
Yes. KS, send them to me, louise@andrewberry.co.uk, if you have any pictures that you want me to show.
Please do.
Yeah.
We shall leave it there.
Fabulous.
Thank you all very much for joining us today. And don't forget, our podcast, Jewellery Talks at the Bench. We have one coming out all about imposter syndrome.
When can we expect?
As soon as we can possibly get that done. It
Okay.
may not be this week. It must be next weekend.
Yeah, good. It's going to be a good one.
It's going to be a good one. It's going to be applicable to everybody. Applicable? Yeah, applicable to everyone.
I think so.
Yeah.
A lot of us.
Yeah.
And a lot of us don't, because there were parts of imposter syndrome. I know I've suffered from it, and sometimes I occasionally do. A lot of the time I do. Some of the time I don't. Mostly do. But there are like facets to it that I didn't actually recognise as imposter syndrome, and that's really interesting as well. There's things that I do which are kind of like typical and go hand in hand with it, which I didn't know were related.
That's good, isn't it?
It's really interesting, really, really interesting.
Because you listen to it and you go, oh my gosh.
That's me.
That's me.
That's me.
That's
Yeah.
me. And I got to the end of it. Obviously, I'm editing it, but I got to the end of the hour chat, and I was just mind blown.
You look shocked.
I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. This is what I'm going to do to make my life.
This is because
Not
the morning
necessarily
after
easy,
we said
yeah.
to each other, didn't we? I've taken things away from the podcast that I didn't expect. I've made positive changes to the way I approach things, or
Yes.
I'm planning on, which I didn't think would be an
That's
outcome
good.
for me, if I'm honest. So yeah, it's really good.
It's a good one.
Really
So
good.
everyone, keep an eye out.
Oh, Claire, no, not Claire, sorry, Tessa's saying what's the topic for the workshop next?
We'll let you know
It's a workshop next week, is it?
next Monday.
Okay.
There's a workshop next Monday. There's something else to put in the diary. Yeah, there's a workshop next Monday. You'll be notified on Wednesday. Emails go out Wednesday. Leave it until perhaps Thursday lunchtime, and you know what the workshop's all about. And at the bench members, paid members, we get an email with a code so they can get the workshop for free. If you're not a paid member of At the Bench, it's going to be only £15. The workshop's superb value. We have some amazing comments after every single one. A 3-hour, 2.5-hour, 3-hour workshop for £15. Interactive here on YouTube. You can chat, we'll ask questions, we'll answer the questions, and we'll have some amazing times.
So if we got any, do we have a topic for next week?
Louise, I'm not going to let
We'll talk about it tonight.
We'll talk about it tonight.
That sounded like a threat, didn't it? Okay.
We'll talk about it tonight. So everyone,
Great.
Yes.
Helen is saying getting 4 soldering boards for Valentine's Day. Yay!
Hey.
Fabulous. Jane says thanks so much. Happy Valentine's Day to a fabulous couple. Did you get the hint that Louise wants roses for Valentine's?
yeah, that was subtle, isn't it?
You never buy me flowers.
It's a bit late now.
You don't, do you?
No.
I mean, you
You
spoil me.
Yeah.
But flowers. In fact, you did actually in the last house. You bought me 12 a dozen bare-rooted roses, which I put. No. But it was lovely because I planted them and I looked after them, and then I had all the roses. More roses than I could possibly want.
have.
Red roses, weren't they?
Yes.
So that was quite
bare-rooted
lovely.
roses.
I just had to plant them all.
And look after them.
Yeah, but it was
to
great.
reap the rewards.
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
But I like
that's
that. That was nicer, yeah.
It's
So I shouldn't say you never buy me flowers because it's not true.
All right, then let's go. Everyone,
Come on, then.
enjoy the rest of your week. Don't forget, there's 97, there were 99, there's over 100 of you. Just go and have a listen to a podcast. You're in your studio, you're in the car, you're cooking, have a listen. We've only done 3 so far. We've got a fantastic one coming out. Just search for Jewellery Talks at the Bench on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Deezer, you know them all, and have a listen. It's not necessarily going to be all about jewellery, it's going to be something real interesting for you to listen to whilst you're at the bench.
Yes, and will be relatable, I'm sure, for lots.
Yes. So enjoy the rest of your week. We will see you next Monday. No Q&A next Monday. It's going to be a workshop. Everything's going to be going out on Wednesday to you guys, letting you know what it is, how to join up and how to subscribe. And we will see you, if you want to join us for the workshop, next Monday. And if you don't want to join us for the workshop, we'll see you for the Q&A the week after. I don't even think it's going to be the week after. I think after that it's going to be another workshop because we're trying to fit in 2 by the end of this month to get back on track.
We owe you another one, don't we? Yeah,
we do. We owe you 2 workshops this month.
Yes, we're supposed to be one a month, but December was just absolutely just...
So the last one we did was December's. We got 2 to do February, 1 for January and 1 for this month. Yes.
So yeah,
back on track
we'll be caught up then. Yes.
Everyone, enjoy the rest of your week.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to everybody. And that's it. Yeah. So it's... See if you get... Louise surprised me last week. So it's goodbye from Louise.
Goodbye, and it's goodbye from Andrew.
Everyone take care. Bye-bye.